NFL Inside Blitz Week 9 here. And if you have not seen our Tuesday video, make sure you check out that video. It's one of the best stuff that we put out. We've had a lot of compliments on it. I want to pass it quickly to Ted Sobel from Sports USA Live. What's going on with you, Ted?
Well, we got two great games this week, I hope. Indianapolis at New England in the morning and West Coast time, of course, and the Rams at Tampa Bay. And let's start out with the Colts and the Pats. The Colts beat them by 10 last year. Some guy named Jonathan Taylor ran for 170 yards. But guess what? Today we learned he will not play in this ball game. So, hey, it's got to affect them. They already traded Naeem Hines this week away, so you're down to the kids on that squad. But, you know, the Patriots are only 1-2 at home this year. Been totally inconsistent, no doubt. The Colts are coming in losing 2 in a row. They fired their offensive coordinator this week, and that's on only the second week after Sam Ehlinger finally gets his first pro start. So you got to wonder how that's going to affect their offense at all. A lot of question marks for both sides here, Ron.
Deion Jackson.
Yep, that's the guy.
You know what university he's from?
No, I don't.
I'll save you the trouble. Duke University. He's the starter this week. He's been in the league. He was in the league last year, few carries. This year, he's had about 100 yards. Not a great yards per carry average, but in the rotation that I'm reading, it's Deion Jackson. Then it could be Philip Lindsay. It could be Zach Moss. We don't know. He was traded in the Hines trade, and Jordan Wilkins. But more important than that, you have a mobile quarterback going for Indianapolis, and that's been one area that New England needs to improve upon. And if there's any chance that New England can keep this close, it's going to have to be on scramble plays, because the sack ratio really does favor New England to get to him 2 or 3 or more times if he's stationary in the pocket. That's an advantage. You know, with Belichick, if you fumble when you're carrying the ball with Belichick, you get right in the doghouse. Turnovers would seem to be an edge for New England as well. Every turnover is worth 3.5 points. It's hard to anticipate turnovers ahead of a game, but if you think New England's going to have a +1 turnover ratio, you automatically start with a 3.5 point advantage. What are your initial thoughts, Chris?
Well, you bring up a great point, because that's how I lost my Jets bet last week. I needed a missed field goal, or I needed one less turnover, and that's the difference in most of these games. So it is definitely something to keep an eye on there. Ted, you have a good interview on this game, don't you?
Yeah, I have 2 interviews on this game. By the way, again, I'm thinking, though, how the offense for Indy is going to be able to score a lot of points here, because they've been so inconsistent. You lose your OC this week. They're 30th in the league in points per game. And with no Jonathan Taylor, I say good luck. I'd like the move to Ehlinger, but I don't know where his, does he have enough guys out there that are going to be his targets? But one of them is the rookie receiver, Alec Pierce, who's their second leading receiver this year. And I spoke to him this morning at about 10 a.m. Chris?
Alec.
Yeah, hey Ted, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for coming on our network pregame show. We appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for having me.
All right. So, Alex, since week 3, you gained at least 37 yards on at least 4 targets in every game. So how are you seeing your group's trust in you building in the offense?
Yeah, I think, I've just continued to see the quarterbacks just and the coaches trusting me more as a player, giving me more chances, and just allowing me to, make plays down the field.
Your thoughts on the quarterback change and how Sam Ehlinger suits your game, specifically as a deep threat?
Yeah, Sam's been a great leader since he got in the huddle. Definitely like you said, I think we're throwing the ball downfield a little bit more, so it definitely helps for me as a deep threat.
How much work did you get in with him during the preseason, and can you talk about some of that building of chemistry between the two?
Yeah, we did get a whole lot of, live reps work. We definitely got a lot of just routes on there and off-season work. But once it got to camp, didn't get the chance to take a ton of reps with him. So we're definitely building right now and just building more time and all that during the week.
Tell us something about Sam that the average fan wouldn't know.
Sam is an incredibly hard worker. I see his car in the parking lot. It's always like the first parking spot. Like he gets here earlier than anybody, and it's always there when I leave at night. So he's probably here, probably logs the most hours on the team, I'd say, in the building. I think he gets here super early and stays super late. So.
But does he ever offer you a ride home? That's the key question.
I mean, we don't live anywhere near each other, so.
Okay. Hey, it's the least he could do for you. You're catching his passes, right?
Right, no doubt.
We're with Colts receiver Alec Pierce. No Jonathan Taylor, we just learned. Naheem is traded. Who steps into those shoes this week?
Yeah, well, Deion did a really good job in the past couple weeks. He had a big game back in Denver when he had to step up, and the games following that, he had an increased role, and he's really done a great job with all the opportunities he's gotten. And then I know we've picked up some other guys. So we got some new faces in there, and I'll probably be rotating some guys through. I don't know. We'll see what the coaches do.
Yeah, it's got to be a little strange around there this week. You lose your offensive coordinator, Marcus Brady. I'm wondering, how is this going to affect what you guys are doing moving forward, especially with Sam, only one game under his belt, now no OC.
Yeah, right. The coaches have all kind of picked up a little bit of slack, and they're kind of keeping things the same, but we're going to go out and bring some new energy and just play our game.
All right, so thoughts on facing a Bill Belichick Coach D for the first time?
I'm excited. You hear a lot of things. He's a legendary coach. I'm excited to go out there and ready for the challenge.
A couple more real quick things. Biggest surprise in your transition from college to pro?
Just the amount of details they put into the pros, just whether it be like splits or the routes. Like there's a lot of routes that I'll think are the exact same route as another route, but they have different names, and it's just because it's just a little tiny something different on it.
Sure.
And then everything is super detailed. Like our splits is down to like the yard. It's very, very, very detailed game, and it's all about everything. They want you all to run these routes at the perfect yardage and all that. So it's huge emphasis on details.
Last thing, Alec, grade the Colts first half of the season when you guys need to do better from here.
Yeah, no, I think we definitely had a disappointing first half of the season. I think we've shown some flashes, and we just need to put it together, all three phases at once.
Yes, they do.
Hello, Alec.
Yeah, hey, Ted, how you doing?
He's back
right,
again.
Thanks for coming on.
The inconsistency there, Ron, for the Colts, specifically on offense, and their offensive line has been a giant disappointment.
Those questions really got at the nuances that a new quarterback has to face, a new wide receiver has to face, the detail in the NFL as compared to just running a route and getting open in college. And now you're going to do it against a Bill Belichick coach team. Deion Jackson, he was 13 for 62. He alluded to the fact that he ran well against Denver, and he did run well against Denver. And Chris, I think, my take initially is that Indy's going to have to try to shorten this game and work the run game in and not turn the ball over in order to be productive in this game.
Well, what do you make out of his comment where he said he essentially admitted that they're kind of just, coaching as a group and they're not changing anything up on offense?
Well, I think what I read into it is it's all repetition, and they're not getting enough repetitions right now. This is a work in progress. And one thing, I'll piggyback on that. They have to change some things. And Ted's question alluded to that. They may get a few more deep throws in because Matt Ryan wasn't stretching the field. Sam Urlacher, he has a stronger arm. We don't know if it's going to be accurate in the NFL right now. But Ted, is that your sense too, that they are going to throw the ball a little bit more downfield? That might be a subtle change.
Well, yeah, what I've read about the connections with him and Pittman before and what Ellinger wants to do is throw the ball deeper more. I think that's pretty much, they had enough of what Matt Ryan couldn't bring to the table. And it is a little weird. Somebody with his reputation his career, all of a sudden they say, guess what? You're benched for sure the rest of the year. Don't even show up. I mean, that's very strange to me, the way they handled that. I'm not impressed. But it's Ellinger's team now, so why not throw deep? You got the ability to move around in the pocket, and he's got the arm, so go for it. Absolutely.
What do you have there for the New England side of the ball, Ted?
Yeah, New England, I spoke to their special teamer forever, Matthew Slater, the former UCLA Bruin, and his dad, Jackie Slater, one of the all-time great O-linemen for the Rams. And Matthew's always got something to talk about. So let's hear from him.
And the most famous Slater from Saved by the Bell.
15th season. You ever look in the mirror and say, hey, how have I lasted so long? 3 Super Bowl rings and on one of the all-time great dynasties in sports.
Well, I pinch myself every day. I've been so blessed to have the experience I've had here in New England. I never thought I'd play this long. I never thought I'd be a part of something as special as what we've had here. And I just consider myself very blessed. Thank God every day. And I'm certainly enjoying every minute of it, soaking it all up, especially at this stage of my career.
That's what it's all about. That's awesome. You guys are 3-1 since a 1-3 start. So how do you assess the first half of this season?
Yeah, look, I don't think we've been as consistent as we would have liked over the first half of the season. I think if you ask anybody on our team, they'll tell you that. But I think we've showed a lot of promise. And certainly we've continued to improve as the season has gone along. We've had to overcome some adversity with injuries and things like that. So, we're getting to the point now where we're looking for consistency. We're looking for our process to turn into results, and that equals wins, hopefully. And, we've just taken it 1 week at a time. That's the thing in this league. You just have to focus on the week, focus on the task at hand, and, try to avoid looking at the big picture. But, I'm hoping that this week will be the start of putting together some consistent football.
And the big part of doing well overall is making sure Mac Jones stays upright and out of harm's way.
Oh, absolutely. We need him on the field to be at our best. And, what a tremendous young man he is. He provides such great leadership for this team. And obviously we're all excited that he's back on the field, playing well, leading our offense, leading our team, really. And, you're right. We gotta have the big guys up front and the whole team just making sure we take care of him so he can help us win.
We're with Pat's 10-time Pro Bowl special teamer, Matthew Slater. And give me a few specifics on what makes Coach Belichick's special teams so special over the years. Always in the top few in the league. And is he teaching you guys anything different than the other guys are?
Well, I can't speak to what the other guys teach because this is the only place I've played. But
sure.
I think for me it's really about the attention to detail. I mean, from the day I've walked in this building, the attention to detail that he puts into the kicking game has really blown my mind. Whether it's situational football, fundamental football, schematic football, he is so intentional about the details, and I think that puts us in a position where we feel extremely prepared when going on the field. We feel like we have a plan for whatever situation we're put in, and we feel like we have a chance to win our matchups. And, I think you combine that with guys that have really bought into his philosophy in terms of winning that third phase over all these years. You've got consistent buy-in. It's really translated to some really great results for us.
Great. Last thing real quick. Biggest challenges this week against Indy. Last year they killed you with Jonathan Taylor on the ground, but we just learned he is not going to play in this one, so you could take a big sigh of relief there.
Well, we don't want to take too big a sigh of relief because this team's still going to try to come in and do what they did to us last year. They were the more physical football team. They established the run. They stopped our run, and they played better in the kicking game. And that equals the more physical football team. So we know that's their recipe for trying to beat us. We need to match their physicality as best we can. We need to be really locked into the details of our game plan. And then ultimately we need to execute come Sunday. So we'll see how it goes. That's
Matthew Slater. The guy's played
Matthew,
forever.
15
years, exactly. That's how many years he's been in the league. And, he's one of the great guys. I've talked to him several times. And a great spokesman for his team because he's well thought of by not only the league, but he's a thoughtful guy when he gives you answers, he thinks about those answers, which is appreciated on our end. Look, the Patriots are not the team that you want from a consistency standpoint. He mentioned that word several times. I don't know what it's going to take. They need a few more playmakers on offense. There's no doubt about that. So, and the O-line has got to be better as well, Ron.
Again, we heard attention to detail be mentioned, and what keeps them in the games is essentially that third phase, special teams. I mean, normally you don't see somebody on special teams 15 years, certainly not on one team. Those are the expendable guys on your roster. But Belichick is 2 steps ahead of the rest of the NFL, and you steal points when you have that kind of production. So, Chris, all said and done, any play on the game?
Oh, let's see what we're doing. Where are my glasses? There we go. I'm going to have to kick myself in the nuts here, and just kind of put it on a lean. So if I do see a 7 pop up, I'm going to be involved in the Colts. I'm just looking at the trailing metrics here, and Indianapolis is down a little bit over the last 5 weeks. Oh no, they're actually up just a little bit, and the Patriots are down just a little bit over the last 5 weeks. And I make this line over a field goal, but less than a touchdown. But if it hits 7, I'm going to be involved. And as far as the total, I don't know. Probably the under looks good there. What about you, Ted? What about you, Ted? Do we kick you in the nuts? You have a pick on this, or do we pat you on the back?
No, I'm not supposed to pick. I do have a job to do here, but at the same time, I want Indy to win because we have them next week against Vegas, and that'll make that game more interesting. That's the most important thing to me.
Ron, what about you? You get a kick in the nuts, or you get a pat?
No, I don't get a kick in the nuts. Timing is everything, and I had planned to discuss my approach to this game. I thought I would read the market that Taylor hadn't practiced for 4 or 5 days, that the line was going to go up, that people would come in, check against the rookie quarterback. So I took my -5 and my -5.5 yesterday, and then we get this news right before the game, and so I had to tweet it saying, "Don't wait for the show. If you like them, you better pick them now. There's 5.5, and it's already trending to 6." And I do think, Chris, you might find the 7 by game time. Certainly a 6.5. I think we're going to see more money on New England, and then I hope to buy some back and see what happens. That's my approach to this game. That's how I had anticipated working on this game from the get-go.
So in other words, when I suggested we should be doing a Thursday video would have paid off for people yesterday. Right?
On the other hand, you never know who's playing and who's not until these Friday workarounds. There's just so much going on. So you gather the information when you can. And if I find something, I'll try to tweet it out beforehand if it's one of our games.
I think we've got, 6 wins between the Rams and the Bucs? Is that what it is? I don't have their records in front of me.
Exactly what it is.
Okay.
Yes,
that much, huh?
2 very disappointing teams. You got the 2 worst rush offenses in the league. The Rams are 31st and the Bucs are 32nd. So go figure that out. And both teams are like, when you look at their offensive stats, they're both down about Stafford and Brady of almost a touchdown and a half average per game than last season. That is insanely bad. So you think about that, and they both have their excuses and their realities of what's going on for each squad. But look, something is very wrong in Rams land offensively. The O-line is still more than a work in progress. It's worse than that with the injuries that they have, and their playmakers are Cooper Kupp and who. You got Van Jefferson looks like, and he and Cooper banged up. I think they're both going to play this week. So that helps the cause. And you got Cam Akers, who's coming back from the who gives a damn list. I don't know what list he was on, but I think he's going to play this week, right? And they need him. Now, he's not a great running back, but they need somebody to carry the load.
Well, I think you started off just right. I mean, these teams are down from their projections. They're not running the ball whatsoever. They're both down 3 offensive line starters from last year for various reasons. So the way I first approached this game was to look at how I projected them at the beginning of the season and where they are now, because maybe I had already projected them to be bad. And so for the Rams, my plus 11 sack ratio projection, 46 to 35. Right now, they're at 15 sacks for them, 24 allowed. So the plus 11 is -9. So we've got a problem in that area. And I think we find out how much Von Miller was worth to this team. They wanted to pull the trigger on Brian Burns from Carolina. It didn't end up happening. So they actually have to keep a few draft choices. So, but that ratio is troublesome to me. Their pass defense isn't that much greater. Their run game is garbage. We'll see what happens with Akers because he might jumpstart it a little bit. And we don't know how close to 100% Cooper Kupp is. That's that side of the ball. For Tampa, their sack ratio is actually better than expected right now. It's at 25-13. Their projection was 44-30, which isn't bad, but it's still a very good sack ratio. So that's working. What's not working is the fact that they used to defend the run top 2, top 3 in the league, but they're missing Ndamukong Suh, and it shows about 4.8 per carry. So if the Rams are ever going to get healthy running the ball, this would be their spot. Ted, you mentioned their point offense. It's dismal this year. Even though Tom Brady has a 10-1 TD to interception ratio and he's still swinging the ball, and he still has Godwin, and he still has Evans.
Yep.
What is he missing? What do we say every week? Rob Gronkowski is missing. The red zone play is really, really bad. So, Chris, all these numbers I've been mentioning, what are you seeing in terms of the numbers and their performance?
Well, it's an interesting situation here because, as we've commented in previous weeks, we were ahead of the market on these Rams being garbage ahead of the market. So we benefited from that early on. The way it's mapping out on my metrics is kind of unusual here because overall for the season, I've got Tampa Bay considerably better than the Rams offensively, obviously. And the Rams are actually 15th on the season defensively for me. But Tampa Bay's a few notches above there also. So on both sides of the ball for the season, Tampa Bay's the better team. But looking at the trailing 5 weeks that I like to check in on, we've got the inverse of that going on here. We've got the Rams offensively have kind of picked it up a little bit. They're still down though. They've improved on offensively slightly over the last 5 weeks. And Tampa Bay, a little bit less improvement. So the Rams are doing better offensively. And then when you look at the defensive side of the ball, the Rams are getting Tampa Bay's actually lost some value, a lot of value defensively. And so that's a concern. And the Rams have actually gained just a little bit offensively. So the Rams have been better on both sides of the ball the last 5 weeks, but overall Tampa Bay is the better team. So it's depending on how you're going to weigh those metrics. I lean here the Tampa Bay side of things, but we've got these key injuries where I think the better look might be toward the over in this game rather than kind of leaning toward a side. What do you guys think about the pace of play and the defensive injuries and such?
Well, I think they certainly all come into play, but one of the stats that I looked at when it comes to assessing a team over the long haul is if they're not playing well at home in this league, something is wrong big time. And the Bucs are 1-3 at home. I mean, that is abysmal. It's a joke. And there's no excuse. You can't do that if you're a quality team that's some kind of a contender. They've lost 3 straight overall. We know that's unheard of in Tom Brady's life, probably including Little League, whatever. But to be 1-3 at home, I think that shows something is really wrong there.
Yeah,
Well,
for me, go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead, Ron.
For me, we know the Rams have had Brady's number a little bit. And you'd think if they were focused at all, Brady would care about this. This is really, in terms of your over, Chris, it's really about Tampa converting in the red zone because they just haven't been able to get. I mean, if they have Gronk, these mismatches in the red zone are just amplified and everything looks good. I look at this game, like you guys have said, it doesn't look like, unless Akers reinvents himself, that anybody's going to really be able to run in this game. Because Tom Brady's been more careful with the ball, we know what Matthew Stafford could do. I look at Tom Brady as probably the more effective quarterback in this game. And because the sack edge also favors Tampa, I went ahead and took, I have a play on this game. I have Tampa -2.5 in this game. I hope if I lose the bet, I hope they tie because I'm heavily invested in both teams under for the season. And Chris and I have documented that a number of times, of course. But Tampa's my play in here. I just think they're showing a little bit better in 2 or 3 of the phases of this game.
And Chris, you have a play on the game?
I do not have an official play in the game. I lean the over.
You have an unofficial play on the game?
No, he gets the kick in the nuts this week. Yeah.
I get a kick in the nuts because I don't have an official play at this time.
Well, look, the fact that the Rams have lost 3 of their last 4 and the way they've lost them, I mean, they look like a team spiraling backwards, which is not good. But at the same time, and you also have the revenge factor here on Tampa Bay's side. It's a little late revenge, but still something after last season, the Rams sending them home in the playoffs. So I wonder how much that might come into play. Ron, I know you tend to have, different feelings about that depending what time of the year that game happens.
Yeah, standalone games and early in the year. So that means nothing to me here. The only thing what it means to me here is just red zone performance and whether or not Cam Akers makes a difference. There are no locks of the year. Just the fact that I have Tampa doesn't mean, get the mortgage on it or whatever. It's just based on everything I have. Tampa's the play. And if it works out, it works out.
I do like the Tampa side, and I wish I could bet it. My metrics, the line needs to drop down a little bit farther for me to have it in range. And what's really starting to take shape, though, is this Goff trade is changing. If the Rams continue to lose, the Lions are getting the Rams' #1 draft pick, and where it stands right now, the Rams are going to give up a nice draft pick.
Yes, they do.
Ron, I'm falling asleep. Prop us up.
Wow.
Prop you up. Well, obviously with the Taylor news, the props are going to come out a little bit later for the New England-Indianapolis game. So we didn't see many. The one thing I encourage people to do, certainly I'm going to do, is read about New England's rotation in terms of the running game. Who is expected to get the most carries? Is it Stevenson? Is it Harris? Indy does pretty well against the run. Where I'll be looking, if I can find an edge as to who's going to get the bulk of the carries, I'll probably fade the other one of the two because Indy holds up well against the run. In the Ram game, 2 prices are out there right now on Matthew Stafford, -114 to throw an interception, -120 to throw an interception. I think those are generous numbers. I did say I have already played it. That he will throw an interception. To me, the number should have been closer to 175. Based on that, I'm going to win the play more often than I'm going to lose. And I think there's value at the -114 or the -120 right now. I expect that to creep up later in the week.
Well, I'll bet it now before we release the tape, and it'll be 150 by the time this comes out. I'm just kidding.
What do you got this week? What interests you? What other games?
Well, let's get to your 2 questions first.
I got 2 questions for you. That's right. These are questions. Of course, you guys don't know what they are.
The pressure's on.
The pressure's on. Let me go with Ted first. A few years ago, the trade deadline was pushed back a couple of weeks. So now we just had it. Chris and I talked a lot about how, wow, the trade deadline's getting like baseball. They're using it. There's 6, 7, 18. We had 7 impactful trades out of 9 in the last 24 to 36 hours before the trade deadline. Now people want to talk about making the trade deadline 2 or 3 weeks even later when teams are, they're out of the playoffs and so on. I have an opinion on this. I hate it. What are your thoughts about where the trade deadline is now, where it might be in the future? What do you think about the trade deadline?
I don't hate it because I sort of like the mid-season thing where, people are starting to, okay, what's going to happen here? Is your last opportunity to really make a quality trade for the second half of the year. It's not too late where teams can totally pack it in yet. So I sort of like it in that respect. And what I do love is that finally football has come into the real world like other sports, and they're not afraid to make trades where they used to be forever. The old school guys, they never wanted to do this. They didn't want to trade a first or a second round pick. The world was coming to an end if they did that.
Yeah.
So I mean, in that respect, I like it. And I don't know if there's a perfect time of the season at all. Maybe it could be like week 7 instead of week 9-ish. But I don't know. I just sort of like that midway point, you can make something happen for your squad.
I think as a fan, I would like to have it a little bit later, week 10, week 11. But I think, and have not having spoken about it with Ron, I have a feeling that what he's going to say is that the later you make it, the more harm you're going to actually do to a lot of teams as they just completely dump. They're kind of the earlier it is, the more they have to kind of play the middle a little bit. But the later you get, the more, entrenched they are, with a negative season, and they might as well just get rid of everybody. And then the quality of play could get really ugly.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Ron?
Yeah. So you hit it there. I have a personal thought and the general thought. And the general thought is, there's going to be some ugly games when you got teams that are already going for next year. They traded even more players because the trade deadline is week 11 or week 12. I think it would be terrible for live TV. What if you're in a market where you can only see your home team's game and they're on the road, and you're getting, it's just going to be bad football. And from a personal, selfish standpoint, I'm sitting here with a whole bunch of season wins, and you're tipping the balance of power a little too much in week 11, 12, whatever. And you're causing some teams I don't want to handicap what's going to happen in week 12 when I'm making these future plays. And even players, when McCaffrey changes hands and you might have a future on McCaffrey, or a lot of these plays, because as Ted knows, I have 100-some season player props each year, and I don't want them to prop it up into another team where they're going to get more carries and stuff. So selfishly, I think it changes some of the handicapping, Chris, that you and I might do.
Yeah, and that's going to be larger spreads, which we don't like to deal with toward the end of the season and such. And that's why I kind of put it as a fan. I think it's great, but as a bettor, and as for an overall product, I don't necessarily think it's as good. But what this year has taught me is I'm certainly not going to be expanding my season wins futures in the future. I just maybe the player props and stuff like that are something I can get behind. But these team season win totals, they're just too goofy this year for me, and they're so time consuming to get involved in. I'm really reevaluating my interest in those for coming years.
17th game adds a variable that's a little weird for the season win total, as far as motivation and how teams and players can get through the whole season. I have a second question for you. I've got 5 coaches. Kind of rank them. You either can rank them or rank them in first versus last. As of right now, who would be your coach of the year? And I listed 5. Sorry I didn't put the Denver coach in there, but Nick Sirianni of Philadelphia, Robert Saleh of the Jets, DeBall of the New York Giants, O'Connell of Minnesota, and Pete Carroll of Seattle. You got a rank order or a preference? Either one of you want to start?
I've got Daboll number 1, Pete Carroll number 2, and then after that, throw them up in the air and it's dice, whatever lands. I just think Carroll's done an unbelievable job with this team. There's 5-3 is not like wow, but what they've done, they've won 3 in a row. They look like a totally different franchise than what we expected this year. We thought their defense would be like really below average. They have played great. And Pete's a defensive coach. And of course, Gino is the comeback player of the last few centuries. So a lot of credit goes to that guy, but I love the culture that's changed with the Giants a lot, as much as anybody.
I don't want to see the award go to Philadelphia because I think Philadelphia is just, has too many tools and had the expectations already in place. So sadly, we're not going to go there. But I agree. You're looking at the Giants in Seattle. I kind of probably push the nod. That's really tough because when you talk about changing a culture, that's just so important. But Carroll's work is just incredulous also. I'll put them just tied at this point because let's see how we're barely at the halfway point of the season. Let's see how they finish. But I also see, Carolina's been coming on strong since they had the coaching change, right?
Just whatever. Wait. It's interesting. And people are watching the show or listening to the show, which we thank. And they're betting. They're live betting right now who is going to be the coach of the year. And I just thought it would be a fascinating subject because you could make a case for Nick Sirianni, but I think you can make a better case. Chris had me thinking there. GM of the year is Howie Roseman. He put the wide receivers together. He got Gardner Johnson, who leads the league in interceptions, 2 weeks before the season started. He got Bradbury from the New York Giants. He's orchestrated a lot of trades. They just added Robert Quinn, who they're trying to move into the offense. I think Roseman would be GM of the year, but Sirianni's going to get a lot of love. But I also agree with you. I had Carroll slightly ahead of DeBall for the New York Giants, and we know this could change rapidly because Seattle's playing over their heads, and the Giants are playing completely over their metrics. But if we gave out the award today, that's the way I would go. But better is if somebody's going for coach of the year right now, they have to take into account that these teams might regress a little as well. So it's a fascinating race right now. And if you're betting that, I'm curious to hear what your reasons are because it's really it's a 5-horse race to talk about Breeders' Cup on Breeders' Cup Day.
And, there is an issue there with quarterbacks too. Okay. The second half of the season, what Geno Smith is doing, I think he can continue the way they're running their offense. But as far as Daniel Jones is concerned, I don't know what guy I'm going to see every week. So if he gets on this turnover thing again, then forget the culture because it's going to be like spoiled yogurt over there, that culture.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out because if the Jets just fade, then that's no good. But if they somehow keep it in gear, that's an impressive turn of events there. But I don't have a lot of confidence on that side of things. And then what happens if the Vikings continue to win and Seattle and the Giants kind of fade a little bit? Then you've got to look the Vikings way. So I see another team or two that could come out of the woodwork potentially that could draw some attention. Atlanta and Tennessee, if they make a huge turnaround, if Atlanta keeps it up, if Tennessee runs the table somehow, then you'd be looking that direction. So those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, fascinating. Maybe we revisit this in 2 or 3 weeks before the end of the season because it's just not so clear cut. Sometimes we have a clear cut leader by this time of the year. This race could go in a whole bunch of different directions.
Yeah, I think about 3 weeks from now would be about perfect time to revisit and say, okay, where are these teams? Like Minnesota's got a stretch here the next 3 weeks. They're going to show who they are.
That's right.
Okay, so we'll see.
And that's a good segue.
We're pretty much done for the show. Let's talk about a few games that we have in our mind. Ted, what games intrigue you the most?
Well, we just mentioned Seattle. I like the Seahawks at Arizona game. It intrigues me. It's the only other game in the afternoon with our Rams Bucs broadcast on Sports USA. So it's going to make my life easy. I don't have to give 400 scores, just one game. Look, I don't know what to ever think with Arizona week to week. Ad nauseum mention how much I question their head coaching ability there. But they are 7-12 since they started last year at 7-0. Okay, so this is one of those games. If Arizona doesn't win this game, their season's done, and it might be done anyway. But their season is done if they're 3-6 going after week 9. And I want to see what they do against the Seattle team that's been just doing everything right. And can they continue to do that on the road this week? First place Seattle, of course, we're talking about here.
I'd like to add that, believe it or not, as much as we ridiculed Seattle at the start of the season, they're my number one gainer on defensive metrics over the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, well, I mentioned how surprising their defense has been this year, and it continues to get better. And that's a lot of that's coaching. And they got some kids on there too.
Well, Carroll's doing a masterful job of coaching these 3rd and 4th and 5th round cornerbacks that were supposed to do nothing and turning them into, rookie of the year candidates. Who knows?
Interesting you say that because Cam Chancellor was a 6th round pick in the same draft that Richard Sherman was a 4th or 5th round pick. Maybe he's reinventing this again.
Maybe. By the way, one other game. I was just going to mention one other game real quick. Carolina at Cincinnati. I'm going to be interested to see how the Bengals bounce back. I fully expect them to. This is a game where it could be a total blowout. This is their chance to do something special, but they got a lot of injuries too. And
you've convinced me to bet Carolina. Thank you. I was just trying to find the last thing to put me over the edge. And you expecting a Bengals blowout is just all but, put me on to Carolina.
That wasn't one of the games on my radar. I had actually 3. Mini Washington. Hawkinson, how fast can he be indoctrinated into the offense? And I should mention this about Washington. Ron Rivera, the coach, the team, they've said nothing but positive things about their quarterback, who is completely opposite of Wentz. They love this guy. And they love that. I think he mentioned that he functions well in chaos. And we know Carson Wentz does not function well in chaos. So maybe he's the right quarterback for the job. That's interesting. I'm curious from the LA Chargers side. I know they're wide receivers. They have cluster injuries there. But it's time for their front 7 on defense to step up in this situation. They've got talent. They built the roster a little bit, but they've kind of underachieved after the first 2 weeks when it looked promising. The Chargers have been off. They didn't play last week. What are they going to bring to the table now? And then the other game is the Monday game, the Baltimore-New Orleans game. Roquan Smith on Monday Night Football goes from the Chicago Bears to Baltimore, and the Saints are off their 24-0 whitewash of Las Vegas. Fascinating game to me.
Yeah. And by the way, throwing a question mark on the Chargers because we don't know about Austin Eckler. He did not practice yesterday with an abdomen thing, so we don't know about that.
I heard he's going to play.
Well, yeah,
the injuries are getting deep there.
Yeah. And that's a problem, but I want to see, but we haven't talked about defense, and their defense is what intrigues me. Chris, what about you?
I think, well, you picked one of the 2 games where both teams have been getting better over the last 5 weeks on both sides of the ball. So you've got to go 4-0. Two offenses and two defenses improving, and that was Baltimore and the Saints. So I think that's going to be an interesting game, and I'm glad I think that line's going to get bet down, and if it gets bet down enough, I'll be on the Baltimore side, but nothing at this point. And then the other game that has two teams that have gotten better on both sides of the ball, both teams, and I think is a really cool game, believe it or not, is Miami and Chicago. I'm not necessarily buying that Miami and all these moves are going to all of a sudden turn them into Super Bowl contenders. And I don't think the Bears are packing it in at all. I think that they're kind of excited about their future. I mean, going into this season, how could there be any optimism in Chicago? And I feel what they've been doing this season on the field, they're just improving. Fields is showing hope. I mean, a lot of people were kind of throwing him under the floorboards coming into the season with not a lot of optimism, but he looks like he has some potential, and they're giving him some tools to work with. And I'm going to be interested to see how that game goes. I got a funny feeling it's one of those shootouts that Red Zone keeps going back to.
Well, I'm glad that the Bears acquired Claypool, because to me that gives some hope there that they're actually thinking about the future and trying to find out, can Fields do it or not? And you need somebody who's going to help him. So this is a real key piece for the rest of the year, because if Fields falls flat on his ass for the last second half of the season, that changes everything here, because now he has an extra guy and an important guy to be able to have as a target. I like the Bears this week against Miami, no doubt.
Motivationally, I think getting Claypool was important after dumping your two veteran linebackers. So I think their frame of mind is better. Baby steps with Fields may continue, but now they're trying to do what other teams have done, surround him with a little bit more talent.
Yeah.
The one game, there's one game where you've got a matchup of teams that are getting worse on both sides of the ball, and that would be the Garbaggio beans versus the Restore the Snore, Green Bay versus Detroit. So that'll be a yawner, but Green Bay's getting healthier. They've got some more tools. I don't think the balloon is deflated in Detroit yet, because, Goff is playing for a position. Campbell's on the hot seat. They fired their their defensive backs coach, who was really liked, actually. So it really is making people think there. Swift is going to be back in the lineup, it looks like. I think that's going to be a little bit of an interesting game. And the Minnesota-Washington game, boys, that's going to be a tale of two sides. I know a lot of the nerds like the Washington side. There's I lean the other direction in that game, even though the Vikings are kind of sliding through every week. We'll have to see what happens in that game. But I think the Minnesota-Washington game and the Dolphins-Bears games are going to be exciting. Those are going to be the two best games early on.
Yeah, when it comes to Green Bay, I think that they may be getting healthier in some positions, but not in receiver. Lazard's banged up again, and Sammy Watkins came back, and he's not healthy, and he's never healthy anyway. They got issues offensively. I don't know how they're going to score a lot of points, but they certainly helped to go against the Detroit Lions defense. If you're gonna get better, this is the time to do it, baby.
Two ways to get better: chicken soup and the Detroit Lions defense. But situationally, well, Detroit's a mess. Situationally, they're in the best situation that you can ever imagine, and that we talked about off air. So we'll see what happens. It is a light because there are 6 teams on buys, but a fascinating slate. So it is
some good matchups this week.
I had to wear the dunce cap this week because I tweeted. Somebody asked me privately what I would make the Vikings and Green Bay on a neutral field, and I put a 7.5 out there, and I was instantly eviscerated by everybody and their grandmother. and with good cause. I was going more by my numbers than what market numbers would be.
Yeah.
And universally, it came back that Minnesota, would only be like a 1.5 or 2 point favorite. Now, on that point of the matter, okay, I wish they were playing that game. They do play again the second to last game of the season, but I don't think both teams are going to have something to play for at that point. So it's not going to be the same dynamics, unfortunately. But boy, I'd give my left arm to bet Minnesota at under a field goal against Green Bay in a neutral field. And I just feel like we were with the Rams early in the season when these guys kept coming out and saying the Rams are better than Dallas, the Rams are better than San Francisco. They learned a quick lesson. I think they're going to learn a quick lesson on Green Bay here. Green Bay is number 32 over the last 5 weeks. They're in the bottom 10 overall season metrics for me. They are not a good team. They didn't pick up anybody at the trade deadline. You cannot imagine that the people are sick and tired of Rodgers throwing everybody under the bus. I don't know how these players can uniformly get behind Rodgers and put out their best effort, because I think he's wearing out his welcome there.
Well, a lot of them are kids on the offense, so in that respect, they just have to look up to him and take it, because they don't know how to be a pro yet anyway. I'm talking about some of the baby receivers they got over there, and the rest of them, they know who Aaron is and how he is, and he's volatile at times. Bottom line is their offensive line has got to be a little bit better. They got Bakhtiari back, but he's in and out of the lineup all the time. If that line doesn't hold up, they are dead meat for the rest of the season.
Well, I think my closing thought for this show brings us back to your interview with Slater and Bill Belichick. Attention to detail on special teams. So certainly Green Bay's special teams will bail them out, right? Oops.
Excuse me.
31st, 32nd the last 2 years, and one site says they're 32nd right now.
Wow.
So we got a 3-year track record of Green Bay not going to pick up some extra value on special teams. So if everything else is going wrong, like you're saying, Chris and Ted, special teams not going to bail them out. That's a bad sign.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that they got an over-the-hill kicker too.
Yeah, that's just one part of the game. It's punt protection. It's everything else.
Oh, no,
do.
but I'm just saying, though, you can't rely on him anymore either, though, in the clutch. So that's, he's worn out his welcome, I think. It's time to make a change. Look, this team needs to pick up some more in the draft, and I think they made a major mistake, not even trying. I'm not saying they weren't on the phone, but not actually getting the job done with a deal this week. Somebody that could have helped. And Claypool would have been one of them.
One more notation on this Green Bay. I just noticed they are, and think about this, they are 2.5 points worse over the last 5 weeks than any other team in the NFL. They've lost 2.5 points of value more than any other team. And I don't know whether people can put this in perspective, but losing 0.5 point to a point is relatively significant. 2.5 points from number 2, that will tell you how poorly this team has been playing, all across the board. And when you mentioned kickers, I saw the Chargers are trying out a third kicker. So we might see yet another kicker this week.
I'm loosening up. I'm ready. If they ever need me for, one NFL paycheck, I'm ready.
Okay. I think that just about wraps it up. Next week, we've got a combination of, I'm really looking forward to this Vikings-Buffalo game. And Ron and we'll tell the story about what happened before this show next week. How's that sound?
Okay.
Oh, I love that.
Because that was a funny
better
story.
jot that down. Yeah, that was funny. Yeah.
Yeah, I wish we had that on camera because.
So we got Minnie at Buffalo next week, and then Indianapolis at Vegas. That's why I'm rooting for the Colts this week to make that game even more interesting. So we'll see what happens there. But always fun working with you guys. Week 9, can you believe it? We're already past the halfway point. Here we go.
I know it just sucks. We're in the heart of it and we should be appreciating it. And now we're getting to the point of where it's going to start to dawn on us that the glass is half empty instead of half full.
Already dawned on me.
Oh, no.
All right. Ron and I are going to be back Tuesday if he's not vacationing again. And Ted, Ron, and I will be back next Friday.